you think the role of risk has in our purpose, in our sense of purpose?
Well, that's a good question. I think anytime that there's, you know, especially when it comes to faith, but anytime that I'm trying to do what God calls me to do rather than what I want to do, there's always a step of risk. There's always a risk. There's always a moment which, am I going to do it my way or God's way? You know, faith isn't something you just say, you know, I've got faith in God. Well, actually, it works out very practically. So if I have money, I have this $200, am I going to keep it to myself or am I going to tithe and give some of it away? Well, I know what I would like to do with it. If I do it God's way, there's going to be a sense of risk involved. And that's just a small example. So I think when it comes to purpose, it's the same thing, is that if we have a purpose, if we feel called by God to do something, there will always be, number one, there will always be people who don't want us to get there. It seems like that's always true. I was thinking this morning about blind Bartimaeus. He's this guy on the side of the road. Jesus is walking by. Bartimaeus says, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And all the crowd basically says, shut up, man. Be quiet. Be quiet. And finally, Jesus stops and calls him and says, Bartimaeus, come on. And then those same voices who told him to shut up now say, get up. He wants to talk to you. And I think anytime, here's Bartimaeus, total risk, right? He's screaming at the top of his lungs, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And these people don't want him to interact with Jesus. They don't want him to step into his new way of life. But he's willing to take the risk, and he does. And of course, the result is that he gets healed. And I think the same is true with us. Anytime you want to step into what you feel God's calling you to do, there will always be people who will oppose you and circumstances that will oppose you. So it will demand faith, and it will demand steps of risk. I think that's just inherent in the nature of it. The result, though, is anytime you do something, it was a risk and you did it, something grows inside you. And something gets stronger. If you wimp out, something dies inside you. You felt like I was supposed to give this money, I did it. Yes, I did it. But if I spend it on myself, then something kind of dies inside me. And in some sense, I am not bringing the kingdom of God to this world. So I think it's actually, I think there's always this sense where we are constantly, remember the Indiana Jones clip where he's on one side and he's at the other side and there's a bridge there but he can't see it, and so he has to take the step, and as soon as he takes the step then the bridge appears and he's able to go across, right? I think there's always that when it comes to choosing to fulfill a purpose that makes God famous or choosing to do a purpose that makes us famous or builds up our lives or builds up God's life. There's always going to be risk in there. And it looks, it could look 1,000 different ways, but I don't know how to get out of it. It seems like it's always there for me anyways, no matter what I do.
There's this great quote that David Platt had. It's pretty impacting to me to just think of the magnitude that he said this, but God does not involve us in his grand global purpose because he needs us. He involves us in his grand global purpose because he loves us. And I know it connects to kind of that earlier comment that you were making about us being here for love. But what role does God have in us finding purpose? How does he help us to discover that in our lives?
Well, I think one of the, just out of my own life, I discover more of what I'm here to do when I learn more about who God is. And so there's kind of two sides, and I think they go hand in hand. As you get older, and as you learn more about yourself, And as you learn more about yourself, you learn more about God. And as you learn more about who God is, you learn more about who you are to be. And so I actually think one of the main ways in which we discover our purpose is to discover the character of God. And so let me give you an example to make it a little practical. So one of the things that I've been discovering about God is just how valuable he sees other people. So he sees each of you as worth the price of his son, according to the Bible. That's what you're worth. And I just think to myself, okay, how do I figure out my purpose in life? How does God help me? He helps me by treating you that way. And when I treat you that way, the way that God sees you, I think I fulfill my purpose. How do you treat someone that's that valuable? So I'm driving in my car, somebody cuts me off. You know, the phone rings. Hello, this is God. Really? Yeah. You see that guy who cut you off? Yeah. They are worth the price of my son. So treat them accordingly. Okay, God, sure. You know what I'm saying? How do you treat somebody who's that valuable? You know, that she's actually not just my wife. She's more than my wife. She's the one that God gave up his son for. And so the more I learn about God and God's heart, the more that it influences how I see the world and how I act in the world. So what does that mean? If she's worth that much, maybe I'll just pause before I say that remark. You know, or ultimately, if I really believed it, I would come up to you guys and be like, whoa, Rita, you're worth the price of God's son. Wow, it's cool to be in your presence, right? That ultimately, the more I get to know God and God's heart, the more that it impacts my purpose and how I live my life out. And so I think this very discovering this relationship with God transforms the things that matter. It makes different things matter to me.